Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Excited to be here.
Always good to have you with us. Today, we're going to be going into a topic that I think a lot of people maybe haven't thought a lot about before. We're going to be talking about the use of animals in warfare.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I think when you hear that initially, you might think, that's a little strange. But as soon as you start thinking about it, you realize there's actually quite a long history there.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of really, really interesting stories. I think a lot of people, when they think about animals and conflicts, maybe they think about, horses being used in cavalry or something like that.
Right.
But it goes way beyond that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So we're gonna get into all of that. We're gonna talk about some individual animals, some specific conflicts where animals played a role, all that kind of stuff.
Sounds fascinating.
Yeah. So I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
So why don't we just jump right in then? We'll start kind of chronologically. So we'll go back to World War One.
Okay.
And one of the things I think about with World War One, or one of the images I have in my mind, are the trenches, right?
Yeah.
Just the horrible conditions in the trenches.
Absolutely.
And obviously communication was incredibly difficult and dangerous in those conditions.
Right, right.
And unreliable. You couldn't exactly string up a telephone wire across no man's land. So this is where animals, and specifically pigeons, come in. They were used extensively in World War One as messengers.
Yeah, they were vital.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only way to get a message through.
And there's one pigeon in particular who became quite famous. Her name was Cher Ami.
I've heard of her. An incredible story.
Yeah, she was a hero, basically. Saved the lives of a lot of soldiers.
Hundreds, yeah. The Lost Battalion, they were called.
Right, they were trapped behind enemy lines, cut off from their own troops, taking heavy fire, running out of ammunition. It was a desperate situation.
And all their communication lines were down. So they turned to Cher Ami. They attached a message to her leg, a desperate plea for help. Their coordinates, the size of the German force, a request for reinforcements.
It's hard to imagine the pressure on this bird. Flying through a war zone, bullets whizzing by.
And she was hit. Shot through the breast, blinded in one eye.
Oh, wow.
But she kept going. Flew 25 miles back to headquarters with that message.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Landed with her leg practically hanging off. But she got the message through.
And because of that message, the Lost Battalion was saved. Nearly 200 soldiers owed their lives to this pigeon. She became a symbol of hope.
Absolutely. She was awarded medals for her service. They even fitted her with a little wooden leg.
Really?
Yeah, it's true. And when she died, she was preserved and is now on display at the Smithsonian Museum.
Wow, so her story really kind of captures that amazing bond between humans and animals, even in the midst of something as awful as war.
Definitely. But as we'll see, it's not always so heartwarming.
Yeah, unfortunately. So let's move on to World War II now, and a very different kind of animal story. This one involving, believe it or not, bats.
Bats, huh? This should be good.
Yeah, this is Project X-Ray. Project X-Ray, bats strapped with explosives. It sounds like something out of a comic book.
It does, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But this was a real project seriously considered by the U.S. military during World War II.
So walk me through this. How do you even weaponize a bat?
Well, the idea was to use Mexican free-tail bats. Thousands of them. These bats are tiny, but they can carry more than their own weight.
Okay.
So the plan was to attach small incendiary devices to these bats, little miniature firebombs.
I'm trying to picture this.
Then they'd be loaded into containers. These containers would be dropped from planes over Japanese cities before dawn.
Before dawn? Why before dawn?
Because bats are nocturnal. So the idea was they'd fly out, seek shelter in the eaves and attics of buildings.
And since a lot of Japanese cities were built with wood and paper at the time.
Exactly. The bombs would ignite, causing widespread fires.
Wow. Talk about an unconventional tactic.
It was a long shot, for sure. There were a lot of logistical challenges, like how do you ensure the bats fly to the right targets? How do you control their behavior?
Right. Bats aren't exactly known for their obedience.
Exactly. And there were some, shall we say, unexpected test results, like the time a bunch of bats escaped and set fire to a U.S. Army air base.
Oops.
Yeah. In the end, the project was scrapped. The U.S. decided to go with a different, slightly more powerful weapon.
The atomic bomb.
Right. But Project X-Ray remains one of the stranger footnotes in the history of animals in warfare.
No kidding. Okay, so we've had heroic pigeons, we've had explosive bats. What else you got?
Well, how about a bear who served in the Polish army?
A bear in the army. You're kidding, right? Come on, what's the story there?
His name was Wojtek. a Syrian brown bear adopted by Polish soldiers during World War II.
Adopted, like a pet.
Well, not exactly. They found him as a cub in Iran, traded some rations for him. He traveled with them through the Middle East, even to North Africa.
A bear on a troop transport.
He became quite a morale booster for the soldiers, learned to salute, march alongside them. Apparently, he developed a fondness for beer.
A beer-drinking bear in the Polish army. I've heard it all now.
He was even officially enlisted as a soldier. It was the only way they could get him on a ship to Italy.
So he had rank? He's getting paid?
Well, he got rations. And there are stories of him helping out during the Battle of Monte Cassino, carrying crates of ammunition.
A bear carrying ammo in a battle. You can't make this stuff up.
There are photos. He became a bit of a legend. After the war, he lived out his days at Edinburgh Zoo, often visited by his former comrades.
Wow, that's quite a story. But it also kind of makes you think about the ethics of all this, you know?
Absolutely. Wojciech's story is heartwarming, but it's not always that rosy. Using animals in war raises a lot of ethical questions.
Yeah, I mean, a bear drinking beer is one thing, but what about animals being put in harm's way?
Exactly. And that's something we see throughout history, especially with dogs.
Right, dogs have a long history in warfare.
From ancient times to today, they've been used as messengers, guards, trackers.
And they often form incredibly strong bonds with their handlers.
Absolutely. Take Stubby, for example.
It's Dovey.
He was a bull terrier mix, served with the U.S. Army in World War I.
Okay.
He was smuggled to France by his handler, ended up saving his unit multiple times.
Really? How so?
He could detect incoming artillery fire, gas attacks, even found wounded soldiers in no man's land.
Wow.
He was wounded in action, became a decorated war hero, met 3 presidents, led the Georgetown Hoyas onto the football field.
Quite a life.
It is. But then you have cases like the anti-tank dogs used by the Soviets in World War II.
Those were the dogs trained to run under tanks with explosives strapped to them.
Right. A desperate measure and a tragic one. The program was ultimately a failure and many dogs were killed.
Yeah, it's a reminder that not all uses of animals in warfare are equal. Some, like Stubby, might be seen as heroes. Others, like the anti-tank dogs, well, it's hard to justify that kind of sacrifice.
Definitely. It raises all sorts of ethical questions. But let's shift gears for a moment, move from the battlefields to the open ocean.
The ocean. I mean, we've talked about animals on land and even in the air with the bats, but what about underwater?
Well, the ocean has always been a battleground too, you know? And just like on land, animals have played a role, often in ways you might not expect.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What kind of animals are we talking about here? Sharks with lasers.
Not quite, though that would be pretty amazing, wouldn't it? No, we're talking about dolphins.
Dolphins? Seriously, what could they possibly do?
Dolphins are incredibly intelligent animals, some of the smartest on the planet. And they have these incredible sensory abilities, particularly echolocation.
Echolocation, you mean like sonar?
Exactly. They emit these sound waves that bounce off objects, allowing them to see in murky water, even identify different materials. They can find things underwater way better than any technology we've been able to develop.
So they're like natural underwater detection systems.
Pretty much. And that's why they've been trained for a variety of military purposes, things like mine detection, locating underwater obstacles, even guarding ships and submarines.
Wow, I had no idea. So which navies are using dolphins?
The U.S. Navy has been a pioneer in this field, training dolphins since the 1960s. They even trained sea lions for similar tasks.
Sea lions, what do they do?
Sea lions have excellent vision and agility. They're good for things like recovering objects from the seafloor, patrolling harbors for intruders, even attaching tracking devices to enemy vessels.
It's fascinating stuff, but I have to admit, it also makes me a bit uneasy. These are intelligent animals, not machines.
I understand. It's a complex issue, no doubt. The ethics of using animals in warfare are always going to be debated. But these programs do raise important questions about animal welfare, about whether we're exploiting their abilities.
Absolutely. I think that's something we need to grapple with as we learn more about what these animals are capable of. It's a fine line between utilizing their skills and exploiting them.
Right. And it's a conversation that needs to continue, especially as we develop new technologies and find new ways to interact with the animal world. We have a responsibility to these animals and to our future relationship with them.
Well said. So I think that's a good place to wrap up our deep dive into the unexpected world of animals in warfare. From pigeons dodging bullets to bears hauling ammunition, from bats envisioned as fiery weapons to dolphins patrolling the depths, it's clear that the animal kingdom has played a more significant role in human conflicts than many of us might realize.
And I think what's most fascinating is that it reveals so much about both our history and our relationship with the natural world. We've relied on animals, for better or for worse, for centuries. And these stories challenge us to consider the ethical implications of those relationships, especially as we move into the future.
Absolutely. So, to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this journey through history's more unusual battlefields. We'll leave you with this. As we continue to learn more about the incredible diversity of the animal kingdom, who knows what other surprises we might uncover, what other hidden chapters in this fascinating story are waiting to be told.